Ultimate Custom Night is William Afton's never-ending nightmare inflicted by the determined spirits of one of his victims, as a means to inflict eternal suffering. Their hate so strong, compelling them to prevent his death long after he should have died. This spirit is commonly referred to as the Vengeful Spirit, or the one you should not have killed. The identity of this spirit remains a debated topic within the fandom, with the common picks for candidates being Cassidy, the 5th MCI spirit who haunts Golden Freddy, or Andrew, a boy introduced from the Fazbear Frights book series. In today's video, I aim to present the identity of this spirit, why the identity fits the character of the one you should not have killed, and the exploration of the core themes of UCN's narrative. So strap on in, because this will be a long one. I hope you enjoy. There is a fair amount of evidence to support Golden Freddy being the one responsible for UCN, so before anything, we should evaluate what there is. Golden Freddy is present within UCN and has some level of importance in the narrative. Golden Freddy can't be eliminated from the night upon using the death coin when set to AI level 1. Instead, when the coin is used, we are greeted with a jump scare of Fredbear. Golden Freddy not being able to be eliminated at level 1 could be interpreted as them being the one you should not have killed. TOYSNHK's high school years, a set of intermissions from UCN, is intended to be a representation of William Afton, TOYSNHK, and his victims' boyfriends. It's commonly believed that the death order for the MCI is as follows: Susie, Jeremy, Gabriel, Fritz, and Cassidy. Pigpatch being the last victim, having the most brutal death, gives us a possible reason why Cassidy would be so vengeful. Bear of Vengeance, another set of intermissions from UCN, could show us Cassidy's determination to always follow Afton. The bear could be Cassidy and the fox William. Under the interpretation that the red bear in OMC's minigame is Cassidy, under Cassidy being the one, her after submersion into the lake leads to a game crash, which could mean the nightmare is over. Cassidy's name was found using the survival logbook as opposed to her name being revealed alongside the other MCI in FFPS, giving some level of significance to her. The significance could be being the vengeful spirit. And last but not least, the final cutscene of UCN, showing Golden Freddy twitching into the darkness, which could symbolize restlessness and undying rage, refusing to move on. Some say the twitching could symbolize her death as caused by spring locks. Wow, so there's a fair amount of evidence in Cassidy's favor, while most of it is interpretative rather than definitive, which in itself can bring problems. There are ways that you can make Cassidy and the vengeful spirit be one and the same. Despite the evidence, I don't think Cassidy, Golden Freddy, is the one you should not have killed. I think it's Andrew. I know that is polarizing, and some of you may have clicked off the video by now, but allow me to explain why I believe Andrew is the ideal candidate for being the one, and why, despite the poor execution, it works thematically. Within the pages of Fazbear Frights number 5 contains the story The Man in Room 1280. This story details a man who has been locked in Heracles Hospital for years. This man, on all accounts, should not be alive. He had been burnt so thoroughly that all that remained of him was essentially a charred skeleton with translucent skin and impossibly operational organs. He had a smoky smell which was accompanied with burnt meat, smouldering plastic, and molten steel. This man, as you all would have known, is William Afton after the events of FFPS, regardless of if it's in the game's continuity or not. We know it's this fire as noted in the Ultimate Guide and from Fazbear Frights itself, yet despite the condition of William, he is still alive, experiencing horrific nightmares. As you can see, Nurse Ackerman continued, he has brain function. She gestured at a monitor upon which a series of jagged green lines played out across a dark screen. That's a REM sleep pattern. According to Dr. Henner, the hospital's sleep expert, that particular REM pattern indicates nightmares. Horrific nightmares. Look, see there, she pointed at one part of the scan, and there. These are coronal, sagittal, and cross-sectional scans of the man's brain. You can see the same thing in all of them. Arthur couldn't, so he said, "You'll need to tell me what we're seeing." Our brains have 4 lobes: the frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. She tapped areas on each of the scans. Unless a brain has a tumor or damage from a trauma, like an injury or a stroke, signals in each of the 4 lobes should be relatively coherent. Although this man shows no signs of tumours or brain injury, the lobe signals aren't coherent. She tapped the scans again, after focus on a sagittal scan, which showed the man's brain profile. There, he could see what looked like two different colours or textures in each area. He pointed at them. "Is that what you're talking about?" Nurse Ackerman nodded. "The doctors believe each lobe of the man's brain has two distinct electromagnetic signals. This is unheard of. What do you think it is?" "We don't think. We know." "What do you know?" "Two signals," she jabbed at each lobe, "means two living things, two entities. They're both vying for control of the brain. That's why they're present in all of the lobes, but they're at odds with each other. We think they're tormenting each other." Later in the story, the nurses try to kill William, but each attempt is thwarted by the second entity keeping him alive. This entity, as we learn in these books, is Andrew. The actions of Andrew matches the characterization of the one you should not have killed in UCM. In these books, it's said that Andrew was another victim of Afton's, as stated by Jake in Epilogue 4. "You were a hitchhiker on the man who killed you. Why can't someone else hitchhike with us?" Andrew's connection to Afton's crimes is implied to be the MCI, a secret forgotten victim of the incident. Well, a new FNAF book decided to show its face, and whether it casts doubt on if this is even true. In the book, we are told that there are 5 kids in the back room, not 6. So does this mean Andrew isn't in the games? Allow me to take you on a side tangent about the nonsense this book offers. The original story has 6 kids in the room, the graphic novel has 6 kids, and not only does the game have 6 kids, but it emphasizes their importance in the story. And no, we can't write them off as being non-canon, as the game and Return to the Pit were written simultaneously. The only way this change was made was if it was a mistake on the author's part, this I highly doubt, or Scott was the one who approved of this change. You see, on May 3rd of 2024, the title and synopsis of the book was released, and judging by the author's comments on its development implies the book was already written by her 3 months before the game released on August 8th of 2024. Meaning, if the change from 6 to 5 was intended to be a retcon, then they would have had plenty of time to remove the 6th kid from the game. They changed the secret minigames to be about fright stories, including the one that further adds to the evidence of a 6th kid and their importance. These minigames were intended to be about Vanny, but were changed to this, with the original file names for the sprites still in the files. There is a whole Reddit post on the matter that I'll have linked in the description, and I encourage you all to read it. But what does this mean? To me, it reads that Scott wanted hints towards a 6th kid in this game, and yes, Scott did have involvement in this game, and decided that the book adaptation having 5 kids was fine for some reason. After reading the book, I think it's because of the Happiest Day section of it. We know that the Happiest Day involves the Core 5 MCI, and as such, the focus of this part of the book would be these 5 kids. Having a 6th kid be present there would be odd, and for the ending to even work, they would have to not be present, as it goes against the character of Andrew to even be there. And it might be jarring for the reader for us to be like, hey, what about the other kid? Or for the reader to wonder, what's up with this one? The intention of this section of the book is to give more clarity of Happiest Day, how it works, and show who the receiver of it was. As implied here, it's a girl, Cassidy, showing that she was friends with the other kids and that she wants some form of peace. If Scott really wanted to show that she was the vengeful spirit, then this was his chance, and he didn't. If anything, it leans towards her character wanting the opposite of what the vengeful spirit wants, not keeping Afton alive forever. Saying Andrew isn't in the games after this book would require ignoring hints in UCM, the Into the Pit game, and even Stitchline's connections to the games via Frailty and Tales games, as that series is a part of the games. There's more I want to say, so these bits will be scattered throughout the video. This is implied in Into the Pit when Oswald discovers 6 bodies lying in a party room. the MCI. Before anyone says, no, Into the Pit does not imply the MCI were killed in a party room. The events of the story take place around a warped memory in the ball pit. We know the MCI were lured into the safe room, and as implied by how Wanted's pizza party level was decorated to be a party room, so simply the memory just placed the MCI in a party room as that's what the children thought the room was. Diving into the game adaptation, the sixth kid makes a return, and this time it's heavily emphasized that something is off about this kid, like it isn't meant to be there or is something unexpected. This trend is carried out in the arcade minigames. Collect the Hats presents 5 party hats, something that can be attributed to the MCI as they were tricked into a fake party room, and as such would be associated with birthday parties. But if you walk through a secret wall, it leads you to a party room where you walk through another wall, finding William holding a 6th party hat, implying a 6th victim, and that this victim and William are connected, supplying evidence for the Andrew attached theory. In the fetch minigame, we once again collect objects related to parties. Balloons, with the 6th one being the odd one out, turning the number 6 purple. Upon collecting these balloons in the recreation of Jeff's pizza, the room which we found the MCI is unlocked, and in it we find Fetch, the animatronic dog that houses Andrew's soul after the events of the Man in Room 1280, once again connecting Andrew and the MCI, while also showing him and Golden Freddy as separate entities. Frozen Into the Pit presents us with a spirit who was killed by Afton with a vendetta against him so great that he prevented him from dying just to torture him. Seems like a slam dunk, right? Well, it's a very controversial opinion to have Andrew be the one you should not have killed. As such, there is a lot of pushback against him being in the games, as it is just a retcon to add another victim to an already established set of kids at the end of Scott's story. But besides that, we're not done. There is still evidence to present in his favour. However, before that, I want to explore why Andrew is the ideal and perfect candidate to be the Vengeful Spirit, and it's got to do with Afton's and Andrew's dynamics as characters and their relations with the core theme of UCN, reflections. Quote from the Silver Eyes. It had occurred to Carlton years before that there were 2 types of nasty people. There were the obvious ones, like a 6th grade English teacher who yelled and threw erasers, or the kid in 5th grade who picked fights with smaller children after school. That type was easy. Their offences public, brutal, and undeniable. But then there was the other kind of petty tyranny, those who grew spiteful with their small scrapes of power, feeling more and more abused by the year, by family who did not appreciate them, by neighbours who slighted them in imperceptible ways, by a world that left them, somehow, lacking something essential. Before him stood someone who had spent so much of his life fighting like a cornered rat that he had taken on the bitter mantle of sadism as an integral part of himself. He would strike out against others and revel in their pain, feeling righteously that the world owed him his cruel pleasures. The guard's face, with its malevolent delight in Carlton's pain and fear, was one of the most terrifying things he had ever seen. Afton is someone who revels in the pain and suffering of others, feeling more and more powerful the more he can take away, feeling more superior over those he has manipulated into doing actions that serve him, and it is his own entitlement that he believes the world owes him, as is put, his cruel pleasures, taking action against those who he believes have slighted him. This is none the more prevalent with Henry. William took Charlie away from him because Henry had something William didn't, the ability to love. So William took the thing he loved the most, leaving Henry vulnerable, giving Afton power over Henry. Now, compare this with how Andrew describes his reasoning for torturing Afton in frights. Andrew was silent for a few seconds. Have you ever been so angry you just wanted everyone to know it? Jake thought about it and remembered a time he was really angry because he had to leave school. But why? It didn't matter. I've been really angry, he said. But I guess I didn't need everyone to know it. But I had someone to talk to. Did you? No. Jake wasn't sure what to say, so he stayed quiet. Did you want to get back at the person you were angry with? Andrew asked. I don't think it was a person. I think it had to do with being sick or something. My memories are kind of fuzzy. Fuzzy? Yeah, so are mine, Andrew said. But I do remember wanting to get back at someone who hurt me. I think I attached myself to him, got into his soul, made sure he couldn't move on when he should have died. I remember I wanted him to suffer. the way he made me suffer, but I don't remember what he did. I just know I hung on, no matter what they did to him to try and save him. I wanted him to hurt. I remember they tried to kill him, but I wasn't going to let him go until I was ready. It's weird. I remember being so angry and determined, but I don't know why. Andrew wanted to get back at the man who had hurt him. This caused Andrew so much hate, anger, and spite that he wanted him to suffer the same way he suffered. Andrew didn't care about anything or anyone else. He just wanted to get back at the man. He wanted everyone to know his anger, to know his pain. This pain came to eventually infect the various items at the Fazbear distribution center, leading to many stories of Fazbear frights. And one last quote from Epilogue 6, the epilogue when the Afton amalgamation, the creature formed. As soon as Jake released his memory, the creature shifted its attention to Jake. Jake felt the creature claw at him. It felt like he was being mauled and pummeled by a force filled with a never-ending need to inflict pain. These three quotes paint Afton and Andrew as thematic parallels to one another, as reflections of one another. Now, I'm not saying that Andrew is as evil as Afton, far from it. Afton is vile by nature. Andrew's anger was of circumstance. As is said by Jake in Epilogue 11, Andrew hadn't been nice exactly. He'd been full of rage as Eleanor was, but Andrew had just been hurt. He hadn't been bad at the core. Eleanor was bad at the core. I know how people feel about using the books to solve the game's lore and such, but they offer valuable insights into the universe of this franchise, and using material outside of the games has been encouraged by multiple official sources. The Ultimate Guide tells us the novel trilogy, while not in continuity, offers an insight into the world and relationship of Henry and William. Scott has said to use the books to fill in the blanks to the past in reference to Fazbear frights, and from the mouth of Matthew Lillard twice has said Scott wants us to use the movies to do the same despite being in their own continuity themselves.
Our job in that movie is to deliver lore, right? So much of the game is like fans have for so long filled in the blanks, and our job is to fill in where we can and what Scott and Emma thinks appropriate. So for me, only thing I care about is that we're doing something that the fans want, that they'll be excited to see.
So while people may not like it, it's something that has been encouraged specifically now as FNAF over the past few years has developed into a multimedia franchise and not just games. Anyway, back to the point I was trying to make. These three quotes set William and Andrew up as each other's reflections. Both lash out against those who have slighted them, inflicting suffering upon them, relishing in that pain as a means to express themselves. For Afton, it's the self-entitlement that the world owes him his cruel pleasures for the suffering they have endured. For Andrew, it's a means to vent their anger, express the emotions that have gone forgotten by the world. Andrew was never reported as missing, as he has never had anyone in his life that cared for him nonetheless remembered him. Jake essentially says as such in Frights. Quotes again, Jake realized he could easily relax into this wonderful memory and allow the whole of who he was to be extracted from the animatronic that contained him and Andrew. He could stop trying so hard. He could go have fun. But Jake couldn't leave Andrew. His new friend had never known love, and if Jake left, Andrew would be lost forever. Jake couldn't let that happen. And again, this can be interpreted from another exchange between Jake and Andrew. So we're in the back of what I think might be a trash truck, where lots of junk figures, Andrew said. How come? Story of my life. Andrew is implied to not have had friends, at least not for a long time. Andrew, when he was killed, is also implied to have latched onto William's soul, which would be why we never see him until UCM. Andrew said he got into William's soul, and this allowed him to keep him alive, even when he should have died, and the idea that Andrew had been with Afton since his death is even implied to be the case in the Into the Pit game. We can find the Sixth Party hat in Collect the Hats in William's own hands. While scrapped and really shouldn't be used as lore, it does show what the original intention of the minigame would have been, or at least make it more obvious. I want to share a quote which can relate to Andrew, which was going to be said by OMC in this minigame. Shout out Klaversky, you fell down the rabbit hole, didn't you? It's not your fault. You didn't know. The others didn't know either. You're a little different from them. You know, you're not trapped yet. Find solace in knowing that. Look to the sky or fall into the pit. The choice is yours. Andrew was led, just like the others, to the safe room, even as an intended sixth victim, or an unintentional one. Like the others, he was not trapped because he wasn't stuffed into a suit, bound in his soul to an animatronic. He could move on, which OMZ presented him with that choice. Either choose to move on or remain here. The choice was his. The hat falling down represents the option Andrew chose, attaching to Afton, striking at William's most vulnerable, similar to how William attacked Henry's biggest vulnerability, feeling powerful. These two are meant to be the thematic reflections of one another. But why does that matter to Andrew being the vengeful spirit in the games? This is because it ties into the core theme of UCN itself, reflections. This is all the more obvious when you know what the title screen's OST is, Eisoptrophobia, the fear of mirrors. The menu represents Afton's life, which you would view it as his failures, the fitting punishment for an egotistical maniac such as Afton, being tortured and mocked by his own failures, forced to look upon his past, riddled with them, which makes Andrew being the one you should not have killed all the more fitting. The one inflicting this upon Afton, the main antagonist of the game, is his own reflection, which is exactly what the spirit in the game is. Afton's reflection. So why is Andrew so angry at William unlike the other spirits? Andrew's anger is the result of the circumstances of his life. Someone who had never been treated properly in his life, someone forgotten by the rest of the world, who had only had his own killer as company. He had no one to talk to, so as such his anger festered, accumulated until UCN, which can also connect back to Afton. Both lacked something essential in their lives, which led to becoming the person they are. That thing being love. Afton was incapable of feeling love, and Andrew, while capable of love, never experienced that love for themselves, again making the two their own reflection. This is great, but where's the evidence Andrew is in the games? We get that evidence in UCN. In Toy Chica's high school years, there is the trend of each of Chica's boyfriends being lured, killed, and kept as souvenirs. So if we follow that trend, we get 7 victims. Charlie and the MCI make 6, so the 7th would have to be Andrew, the one you should not have killed, the cause of UCN. And no, Crying Child and Elizabeth would not be the 7th victim. Crying Child wasn't killed by Afton, his death was the result of his brother, and Elizabeth was an indirect victim of Afton's. She wasn't lured and killed by him, unlike the other kids who literally were. Anyway, the vengeful spirit is referred to by he/him pronouns. Some view the gender as being ambiguous, but it isn't. UCN is a nightmare created out of William Afton's memories by the vengeful spirit themselves. The characters in this game act as extensions of him. They are created by him.
I am remade, but not by you, by the one you should not have killed. I am given flesh to be your tormentor.
So when they refer to them as him, they literally mean him, the spirit, the face, not the suit. And before you go on to say the voice description says the voice actor was encouraged to lean both feminine and masculine, yes. However, the purpose of this is to cast doubt on the gender of the spirit when you hear their voice for the first time. But when you are told what that gender is, you would realize what that gender is.
He's here and always watching, the one you shouldn't have killed. I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed.
Unlike Cassidy, who is a girl in every depiction we have seen of her. We know the animatronics are referring to the spirit and not the Golden Freddy suit because the vengeful spirit's face can appear in the entrance of the office, including the top vent, and Afton didn't kill a suit, and neither did the spirits fully associate with the characters they possess. They remember their names in the novels. They are represented as kids in the movie's mural. Chica reacts to Ralph singing Happy Birthday to Susie in the week before. Bronwyn refers to Bonnie as Jeremy, and Jake and Andrew remember who they are. They don't identify as the Stitch Wraith. The spirit identifying as Golden Freddy would be weird, as it's seen many times in the franchise that the spirits can identify as themselves. Even if that's in doubt, Scott has said that the face in UCN is the face of the vengeful spirits. If they identified as Golden Freddy, then would they not represent themselves as Golden Freddy? OMC's minigame shows OMC refer to UCN as William's demons. Leave the demon to his demons. As UCN is caused by the vengeful spirit, the red bear being here, while we can hear Afton's screams and them entering the lake, shows us that UCN is caused by someone else, not Cassidy. The usage of your own soul also implies that there are multiple souls at play. The Into the Pit game, as stated before, has many connections with the MCI, and every time adds the number 6 to it instead of the typical 5. The binary code of the arcades themselves translates to always watching, connecting back to UCN.
He's here and always watching, the one you shouldn't have killed.
And connecting to Fetch, as Fetch, haunted by Andrew in his story, communicated using binary. Cool detail pointed out on Twitter, not sure if it was ever a hint, but the vengeful spirit speaks through the mediocre melodies, who are powered by battery packs, and Fetch is powered by a battery pack haunted by Andrew. Them speaking through the mediocre melodies means he would relate to them in some way. The mediocres are outcasts, rejected characters, just as Andrew was, so perhaps this is why. Even in the books, Andrew is never associated with Golden Freddy. He wears an alligator mask, unless the body in Golden Freddy in the new kid is meant to be Andrew. If Andrew was really meant to be a stand-in for Cassidy in Frights, then why even bother adding a 6th victim to the MCI? Why not make him the 5th spirit who haunts Golden Freddy? That just feels like an unnecessary inclusion. There are so many things connecting Andrew with the vengeful spirits that I'm not really sure why this should be a debate anymore. I get it, UCN makes Golden Freddy important, but just because they are important doesn't mean Golden Freddy and the vengeful spirits are the same person, which is what we'll be explaining in this next section. Golden Freddy's importance to the narrative of UCN. Golden Freddy clearly has some level of importance in this game, denying that would be insane, but despite the community consensus, I don't think it's completely accurate. To properly explain this, we have to dive into the role Golden Freddy has to the story of FNAF as a whole, and not just their appearance in UCM. It is my belief that the role of Golden Freddy is intended to be the thematic opposite of Afton, the inverse, if you will. This is exactly the case in the novel trilogy. In the novels, Golden Freddy is possessed by Michael Brooks, not Cassidy, and while the spirit in the suit is different, I think the overall role of the character remains the same. Quote from the Silver Eyes: "The man at the podium introduced himself as the school's principal. He had said a few things about loss and community and the fleeting pre-consciousness of youth. He talked briefly about Michael's kindness, his artistic talent, and the impression he made even as a small child on everyone he met. It was true," Charlie reflected. Michael had been an unusually charismatic child. He wasn't exactly a leader, but they've all found themselves wanting to please him to make him smile, and so they often did the things they knew he wanted to do just to make him happy. Some of Michael's friends have come from all over, and I think that is a testament to who he was that 10 years later, with your lives on new paths, moving on to a whole new stage of life. We are grateful you are here. We wanted to give Michael a legacy with this scholarship, but it is clear he has already left one all on his own. The kind, talented, and charismatic child of Michael, with just his relationships with his friends impacted on the lives of many, had left behind a legacy, one remembered fondly by the many who were a part of his life, which is a direct contrast to Afton. Just as Michael had left behind a legacy, so did William. However, it was one of despair, horror, loss, and tragedy. This is reflected in his own charisma, stated by Carlton earlier, and Charlie's first impressions of the man. Charlie looked at the man, considering him the ill-fitted uniform, his peaky, almost exhausted-looking features. He really could kick them off the property or even have them arrested for trespassing, but still, she could not really fear him. His inadequacy shone through him like a kind of negative charisma. He would always be shoved to the back of the crowd, always shouted down in an argument, always picked last, forgotten, ignored in favor of those who were simply more vital, more vigorously attached to life. William, the cruel man who had taken so many lives and impacted so many others as a result, the man who relishes in the suffering of others taking power when he can, is a direct contrast to the kind, caring, and joyful Michael. This can further be seen in his own actions as Golden Freddy. Just like in every other continuity, he is the leader and spokesperson for the MCI. He is the reason why they leave Charlie and the gang alone towards the end of the Silver Eyes, which, to make it clear, he only does because they were his friends from childhood. He knows them and as such trusts them, which is why we see Golden Freddy in the other continuities attack other adults like Ralph in the week before, the night guards in the various FNAF games, the Golden Freddy kid enacting his plan against Spike to make Abby one of them. If Michael didn't know them, he would have attacked them as they would any other adult. Michael also wants to help his friends, the MCI. We see this in the fourth closet where Afton has broken his friends' souls across the fun times, which we can see him attempt to put them back together, forming back into one, regaining their memories. I think this role of Golden Freddy, the character of them, for the most part, carries over to the game's continuity as well. We can see this within the pages of the survival logbook. Cassidy, the faded text, wants to help the crying child, alter text, remember who they are. She wants to help put him back together. From this logbook, we can infer that she wants Happiest Day to happen, as there are many Happiest Day references throughout the book. As she is asking him questions only he would know, combined with the context for these questions in the first place, getting him to remember it makes it clear that his memories are what the Happiest Day minigames are. This can be seen in Happiest Day itself, with Cassidy at the table, the reverse of the bite, which with this helping free CC in the MCI can be interpreted as Golden Freddy reversing the sins of William. Return to the Pit once again tells us that Cassidy is a girl, and also implies that she is the receiver of Happiest Day, showing that she is willing to have some form of peace, unlike what the Vengeful Spirit wants. And we can gauge that this is Cassidy as one, she has curly hair, and curly hair means Cassidy. We go map her up in here. And two, it's in a Happiest Day setting with emphasis put on the last kid given cake. Shout out to Ghost for that one. Or she just wants to help CC in this instance. Regardless, it shows that Cassidy wants to help other spirits move on in any way she can. She is friendly and kind, which is again the contrast to Afton, and not only Afton, but Andrew. Before I get a comment saying Cassidy is friendly, but she is also vengeful towards Afton, just as all the other kids are in the franchise. A character can have different characteristics. She can be vengeful and angry as well as kind. But issue with her being the vengeful spirit isn't that she's vengeful, but that the motives of the two characters don't line up. Golden Freddy wants Afton dead and wants to help the spirit to move on, as well as herself, which the vengeful spirit wants the opposite, wanting to keep Afton alive to suffer, not wanting to move on, entirely consumed in their rage, that they care about nothing else but their gratification over Afton. So it doesn't really make sense for her character to 180 in their motives and character just for UCN's story. Many have picked up on the parallels of Golden Freddy and the Stitch Ray, two animatronics with two souls, one who tries to help the Shattered one. Cassidy attempts to help CC and Jake attempts to help Andrew, who is shattered amongst the items from the distribution center. However, let's compare Cassidy's actions with Andrew's. Cassidy is helpful, kind, wants to aid the crying child in their troubles, while Andrew is defensive, angry, unwilling to help Jake when he asks for it. As someone who many believe is meant to be a parallel for Cassidy, it's quite odd that their personalities and interactions with others seem to be the polar opposites of each other. While the parallel of the two animatronics is valid, the parallels of Cassidy and Andrew don't work at all. The two have very different personalities. One wants to help while the other refuses. One is a complete soul while the other is shattered. One had friends while the other didn't. One was remembered while the other wasn't. The whole premise of Andrew being a parallel to Cassidy relies on the theory that Cassidy is the vengeful spirit in the games. But that's circular logic. Cassidy is the vengeful spirit in the games, so because Andrew is the vengeful spirit in Fazbear Frights, he must be a parallel stand-in for Cassidy because she is the vengeful spirit in the games. Therefore, this is evidence she is the vengeful spirit in the games. This is the problem with parallel theories for me. They rely on the idea that what you believe is already true. While parallels exist in FNAF, take Henry and Edwin as an example, they aren't there to be stand-ins for characters across continuities, they're there to reinforce themes, concepts, and stories across the series, just like any other story. Anyway, moving on. Cassidy and Andrew, as established, if anything, are meant to be the antithesis to one another, just as Cassidy and Afton are, just as Golden Freddy and Afton are, just as Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie are. Golden Freddy is reclusive, mysterious, while Spring Bonnie is charismatic and demands attention whenever they are present, which reflects in Golden Freddy's spirit and William, as well as the wearers of the suits, Henry, and William. It would make sense if this theme is present in UCN, playing on the theme of reflections, which I think it does. Golden Freddy's arc in UCN is meant to run parallel to Andrew's. It's the inverse. Golden Freddy's is about putting aside their anger and moving on, which would be somewhat of a follow-up to FFPS. Cassidy, throughout the series, has wanted Afton dead, just like the MCI, which again goes against the motives of the Vengeful Spirit. As the spokesperson of the MCI, it makes sense that she wants him to die, which is why she would be in UCM to finish her end goal. However, whenever she does try to kill Afton in the games, he never truly dies. He always returns, making a mockery of her, which I think is seen in, ironically, the Bear of Vengeance. Bear of Vengeance shows the bear attempting to thwart the fox, but every time the bear is defeated and made a mockery of, performing different punishments of the foxes. This can be seen with Golden Freddy and William's relationship, making the bear Cassidy and the fox William. If you subscribe to the theory William wore Golden Freddy for the DCI, him wearing the suit would make a mockery of her, being helpless to do anything. In Follow Me, she attempts to kill Afton in Spring Bonnie, but he lives despite that. They are then left on the ground in sister location. William has no chance of survival in FFPS, yet is kept alive by Andrew. And no matter what happens from then on, he always survives, even with her there. Which this trend can debatably be seen in the movie. William is dying in the suit and Golden Freddy leaves him there to bleed out, but as we know, he will live. Bear of Vengeance ends with the bear promising to always pursue the fox, which Golden Freddy does. Afton surviving would rightfully make Cassidy angry, frustrated because she wants him to die, frustrated because she wants to move on, frustrated because she wants her friends to move on, but she wants him to get his justice before she does, which is said by the bear, which is also depicted in the movie novel, in my opinion.
There's layers to your character. You know, we learned some stuff after in the film, but did you draw any inspiration or, you know, from real life figures towards this character playing like a villain?
I really drew from the information I knew, which was very little from the script.
Yeah.
All I really knew was that this kid was murdered by this guy, this really evil person that started this pizzeria, and he was lured in and he was murdered. And I kind of used that as my motive to get back at him, and I wanted to get back at him through Mike. And I kind of just used that, and I put that in my head, and I just went for it.
I think Cassidy's role in UCN is just as it's always been. However, this can't happen because another spirit is keeping Afton alive, and he is too far consumed in his rage to be reasoned with. I believe the story of the bear comes to a close in OMC's minigame. Allow me to share my interpretation of OMC's line: leave the demon to his demons. Leave William with Andrew. Rest your own soul. There is nothing else. You've been at this a long time. You must be exhausted. You no longer have to be the one to kill Afton. He will get what's coming. You have your well-earned rest. Go be with your friends. Cassidy then listens and enters the lake. The lake leads to Happiest Day, as told to us by FNAF World. Upon entering the lake there, you get a Happiest Day. In Frights, Afton's and Charlie's final resting place is a lake. Bodies of water in media often depict spirits moving on, so it makes sense if this carries on into UCN. As the minigame gives you a trophy to FNAF World, I think this means the result is the same thing which is seen in the files of the minigame in UCN. Its name had been changed from Lost World to Your Own. Given the context of OMC's lines, it makes sense that Your Own is in reference to Cassidy's soul, combined where the lake leads, and you get Your Own Happiest Day. Cassidy's arc in UCN is choosing to put aside her anger, choosing to let it go, so that she can help her friends move on, so that she can get her happiest day, letting the memory of the tragedy die as Henry set out to do in the previous game. Freeing the souls. This, I believe, is what the final cutscene of the game is showing us. Many people believe this to be showing the restlessness of Golden Freddy. However, I think it's showing them moving on. The lake led to Happiest Day in World, and that was in a dark void, just as Golden Freddy is in here. Them fading away in the darkness is the opposite of what we see in FNAF 3's trailer. Here, we zoom away from Golden Freddy, while in the trailer, we zoom into Springtrap, representing his refusal to move on, while Cassidy is moving on. The twitching, I believe, is meant to hammer home the contrast, Golden Freddy putting their anger aside for themselves, bringing an end to their suffering, closing off the story of the original games and the MCIs. UCN's narrative is about two spirits, one that becomes so consumed in their rage that it's become a part of them, refusing to move on, keeping their killer alive for their own gratification, while the other is here, angry, vengeful, here to take the justice they have been hunting for the entire series. Their arc, however, is about putting aside their anger to move on for themselves, to be with their friends, lest they become like Andrew, forever lost in their anger. The series frames the spirits moving on as a good thing, ending their suffering in torment after so long, allowing the memory of their tragedy to fade away, as all things eventually do. UCN at its core is about reflections and inversions. I think under this interpretation, these themes and the core themes of the series are fulfilled. So with that, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you liked my interpretation of UCN's story and how the themes of this game are present in the rest of the series too. If you did, consider subscribing and liking for more FNAF content in the future. If you agree or disagree with it, feel free to share down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy your day/evening.